The winter storm howled mercilessly across the countryside. Snow lashed against the windows of Margaret O'Donnell's farmhouse, rattling the shutters as if the wind itself wanted to come inside. Margaret, an elderly widow of 78, sat by the crackling fireplace, knitting a scarf to pass the lonely night. Her days had been long and silent since her husband, Patrick, passed 5 years ago. The only company she had was the faint ticking of the old grandfather clock and the occasional memory that drifted in like smoke. Around midnight, a furious pounding rattled her front door. Margaret froze, clutching her shawl tighter. Few people came this way, and certainly not in a storm like this. Cautiously, she opened the door. Before her stood a group of 21 bikers, their leather jackets dusted with snow, their breath steaming in the freezing air. They looked rough, intimidating, tattoos, long beards, and weathered eyes. For a moment, Margaret's heart raced. Yet behind the tough exterior, she saw desperation. One of them stepped forward, shivering. "Ma'am, we're sorry to trouble you. Our bikes broke down in the storm. We're freezing. Could we, maybe wait it out somewhere warm?" Margaret hesitated. Her tiny farmhouse was humble, her cupboards not overflowing, and the storm raged dangerously. Still, she remembered Patrick's favorite saying, "Hospitality is never about abundance, it's about kindness." "Come in, all of you," she said firmly. The bikers filed in, stamping snow from their boots. They filled the small living room with leather, steel chains, and the smell of engine oil. Margaret bustled about, making tea in mismatched mugs and pulling out blankets she had tucked away. They looked at her in astonishment, unused to such unconditional kindness. That night, they spread out on her floor, couches, and even the hallway. Margaret moved between them, checking if they were warm enough, scolding like a grandmother. Some of the men, hardened by years on the road, had tears in their eyes they quickly wiped away. By dawn, the storm had lifted. The bikers thanked her profusely, promising they'd never forget her kindness. Margaret thought that would be the end of it. But the next morning, a distant roar grew louder and louder until the ground itself trembled. Margaret stepped onto her porch and froze. Streaming down the country road came a massive convoy, nearly 1,000 motorcycles, chrome glinting in the winter sun. The entire field outside her home filled with bikers. They wore the infamous patch of the Hells Angels. Her neighbors, peeking from windows, were terrified. A tall, broad-shouldered man with a silver beard dismounted and walked to her porch. "Are you Margaret O'Donnell?" Margaret nodded, clutching her shawl tighter. The man removed his helmet and gave a deep nod. "Word reached our Brotherhood last night. You sheltered 21 of ours in a storm. You saved their lives. We don't forget things like that." Margaret blinked, bewildered. "I only did what anyone should do." The biker leader's eyes softened. "Ma'am, not everyone would have opened that door. You showed them family when they had none." Then, to Margaret's astonishment, hundreds of bikers began unloading supplies, firewood, groceries, medicine, even fixing her leaky roof. Others shoveled her snow-clogged driveway and repaired her barn. The once lonely farmhouse bustled with life and laughter. For the first time in years, Margaret felt Patrick's words alive in her home again. Kindness begets kindness. She had offered a warm room and a few blankets, but in return, she was given something far greater: companionship, protection, and an unlikely new family. From that day on, the legend of Grandma Maggie of the Angels spread across biker routes worldwide. Riders who once felt forgotten now had a grandmother waiting with tea, blankets, and a warm smile. And Margaret, the widow who once knew only silence, never spent another winter alone.